Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are. This is Katani Alvin talking to you again. The day is Friday, 5th of April. Well, we are still in the EU, or are we? Interesting. But I made a video of Sir William Cash, who I think is a very fine speaker, a very principled man, and I think it's very important that we listen to principled people and see the difference. So this is Brexit, it's political castration, that deal of PM May. Sir Bill Cash lashes out. Now the last one I posted was him lashing out at Yvette Cooper. This one came earlier. It was 29th of March. That was the day we were supposed to leave. Or was it? Let me first say thank you to all the subscribers. Thank you very much to all the commenters. I do try and I read them, most of them, and I do try and answer most of them. And I find them very interesting, and I am very appreciative of them. Thank you. Here we go.
I understand the hubbub in the chamber and an air of excitement for which I'm sure the honourable gentleman, the member for Stone, is suitably grateful. But the House must hear colleagues deliver their speeches, in the first instance to that of the chair of the European Scrutiny Committee, Sir William Cash.
Now, I think it's very important, very interesting actually. I've been watching quite a lot of these debates, and I'm amazed at how people don't listen because they're talking. Here we are.
Mr. Speaker, we have heard a great deal about the process and the underlying reasons for this motion this morning, but actually, Mr. Speaker, what we are really dealing with here is whether or not this withdrawal agreement should be passed and approved today or not, and if not, why not? The first point I would make in that respect is quite simple and straightforward. It is this, that we, under Article 4 of this agreement, will, for a significant period of time, lose control over the lawmaking which is conferred upon this House by virtue of our election as members of Parliament according to the wishes of the voters in general elections. It is unconscionable, for whatever reason, that this House should be politically castrated by the arrangements set out in this Article 4. Mr. Speaker, it is unthinkable, therefore, that this withdrawal agreement should be passed for that reason alone. And I would just refer to the state of affairs within the German Constitutional Court, which takes precedence over all EU laws. The Court often expresses rulings that insist that the EU can only operate or legislate in accordance with what the Bundestag has given it, and that EU actions are illegal if they depart from the terms in which the Bundestag gave that power. If that is good enough for Germany, Mr. Speaker, it is good enough for this country, is it not? The further point, and this is why I asked the Attorney General about the question of whether or not there would be a withdrawal and implementation bill, even if this withdrawal agreement goes down this evening. And the short answer to that is I got no answer, just as I received no answer from the Prime Minister to several questions I put to her about whether or not the Attorney General had given legal advice in accordance with the Ministerial Code. One of the characteristics of this debate is that when you ask a difficult question, you tend to get no answer. That is not good enough in terms of the accountability of the government to this House.
Let me just quickly say, this deal is actually a treaty, and it is not being called its correct name. Makes a big difference.
So, Mr. Speaker, that is the point number one regarding the control over laws. It is unconscionable. Secondly, I certainly will.
My honourable friend for giving way, with whom I have regular discussions, he makes a very interesting point about Germany and the fact that the Bundesverfassungsgericht has often made this point. But is it not true that actually it amounts to no more than to coin a phrase, a political declaration by a court? Because were it tested in front of the ECJ, it would be shown that German law is inferior to European law in just the same way it is for every other member state, and that's why we in the United Kingdom have to have legal exit and stop being a member state, however painful the route it is to get there.
I understand my honourable friend's point, but I have to also point out to him that under EU law, the constitutional orders of the member states, under several cases, Van Genden, Lucy Costa and other ones of the similar kind, it is made abundantly clear that the European Court actually itself asserts superiority over the internal constitutional orders of the country in question. And the reality is that there is a conflict demonstrated by the competence case in relation to the question that he's raised and I've raised, because it is, as I stated, the German Constitutional Court will not countenance direct contradiction with its own law-making. Now, the next point I wish to make, Mr. Speaker, is regarding the Northern Ireland backstop. Now, I know there will be many members of this House who are more than familiar with this, who spent an enormous amount of time, and justifiably, over this question. But what it really boils down to, Mr. Speaker, is the fact that this is about the constitutional status of Northern Ireland within the United Kingdom. The European Communities Act 1972, Mr. Speaker, was a
Order, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I do think, if I may say so, we should reflect on the fact that this debate is being widely viewed, and it is rather discourteous when a member is addressing the House for there to be a hubbub. Let's listen to the honourable gentleman. Sir William Cash.
I may add to that point, Mr. Speaker.
I think it is disgusting that whoever it is that's speaking and putting their point, that they are not being listened to. And that, maybe, is the problem with many of those parliamentarians. They cannot listen. That's so insulting, and it shows how blind they are, mentally blind.
That if they are so blind that they do not want to listen to these points, then as far as I'm concerned, it makes no difference to me, because the points I'm making are significantly important regarding the question of whether or not we agree to this withdrawal agreement or not. I'll certainly give way.
I'm so grateful to the honourable friend for giving way. This is a problem, because he makes a series of very powerful points. Sorry, Mr. Speaker, I do apologise. Isn't the problem that my honourable friend makes a series of very good points, but he's letting the perfect be the enemy of the acceptable. And today we have the chance to leave the European Union, and he and others are preventing that happening, Mr. Speaker.
I, of course, want to leave the European Union, but the problem with this withdrawal agreement is it does not, I assert, represent Brexit in the terms in which the repeal of the 1972 Act, which, as I was saying just now, is an Act of Parliament not only of Great Britain, but also with Northern Ireland. Therefore, the constitutional status of Northern Ireland is at stake with respect to the question of the Northern Ireland backstop, and there is no doubt about that. I'll certainly give way.
I thank my right honourable friend for giving way. Isn't it the case that this withdrawal agreement places irreversible damage forever and will be lasting on Northern Ireland and on our precious Union?
Apparently that is the case.
I hear the Prime Minister repeatedly stating when the question of our precious Union. This Northern Ireland backstop drives a coach and horses through the question of the precious Union. That is the problem. And I would further say that the reason why, as I understand it, the DUP will be voting against the withdrawal agreement today is precisely for that purpose. It puts the Union at risk.
Exactly.
I will continue. I'll give way to my honour.
my honourable friend, is it his view that we're not being shown the bill to implement the withdrawal agreement today, because that would reveal that we have to remove the repeal of the 72 Act or reintroduce all the European Union powers, proving that this is not leaving the European Union?
Exactly. This deal is so suspect.
It's exactly the point, and I see the Solicitor General chuntering a bit. He's a good friend of mine, but I have to say that he knows that this is a serious point. And they have, in discussions, the Attorney General referred to private conversations I've had. I will now refer to one I've had with both him and the Solicitor General. He acknowledges that this is something which would need to be sorted out, because there is a serious worry. And what's happened, if I may say so, Mr. Speaker, is very simply stated. On the 26th of June last year, we passed the Withdrawal Act 2018. Section 1 says the European Communities Act 1972 is repealed on exit day. Exit day operates in lockstep with whatever exit day turns out to be. However, the reality is that because of the saving provisions and under Article 4, the capacity of the court to discipline enactments, it is just conceivable, in fact I believe it is highly potentially possible, that there will be issues of interpretation which could arise. We need to discuss this properly, but we can't do it unless we see a copy of that bill.
Oh, I'm absolutely outrageous that they can't see a copy of the bill.
And that is, I know that my honourable friend agrees. In fact, I have ministers, some secretaries of state, who've actually said to me, without disclosing their names, that they do think that we should see a copy of this bill. Because until we see the drafting of it, it isn't possible for us to be able to make a judgment about the impact that it will have on the repeal of the 1972 Act, which itself is the anchor of the referendum. And I repeat the point I'm making about this because the referendum itself was endorsed by a sovereign act of this Parliament, sovereign act, which transferred the decisions to the British people. And the British people made that decision in line with the wishes of the electorate. I'll give way to my honourable friend.
Grateful, and I'm perfectly clear that whatever the public voted for in the referendum or at the last general election, nobody had a clue they were going to be voting for a withdrawal agreement, anything like the one before the House today. But can I ask him about a matter of good faith? Because I interpreted the Attorney General's remarks to be a suggestion that we should perhaps approve this today in order to satisfy the technical terms of the extension agreed by the 27 on the basis of some kind of a ruse to get an extra extension, even though we haven't actually approved the withdrawal agreement and the political declarations in the terms that we said we would. Is that an act of good faith with our European partners?
I very much agree with what my honourable friend is saying. And I go further and say that the change of gear between the 26th of June, when the Withdrawal Act received royal assent, and the 6th of July, and then the introduction of the White Paper after the Chequers proposals, demonstrated to me bad faith, because it must have been pre-planned. While that withdrawal bill was going through, with which I was thoroughly in agreement and gave every conceivable assistance to the government to get it through, and the reality is that because it was only...
This will be continued. God bless everyone. So look out for part 2 and talk to you again soon. Catania Alvin from London signing out. Bye-bye.